Hi guys, welcome back once again, and now we are covering question 3 of the Business Analysis Practice sample paper. So let's first read the question to get an overview of what is being asked here. And remember from the past two, what are we looking for first? We're getting an overview, but we're also trying to identify the technique. Maybe something that is not directly mentioned, and sometimes it is. So let's see if it's mentioned or not. So, a local authority is undertaking the redevelopment of its high street. The project is being led by the Chief Planning Officer who owns the budget. He has appointed a planning specialist to advise on the project, but also recognizes the importance of local input, particularly from the town's Chamber of Commerce. With regard to the overall project, which RACI categories best reflect the level of involvement of these stakeholders? Select all that apply. So we have 4 answers here. It's accountable, responsible, consulted, and informed. And it is fairly obvious here that they're asking about RACI. So, what do we know about RACI? We know that RACI is a technique to map the responsibilities of stakeholders. Sometimes we may map stakeholders that may be responsible for specific documents, for specific products, or even specific tasks. So if we look at this scenario here, what we need to do is, because we know that RACI needs to map the stakeholders, we need to identify who the stakeholders are in this question. We may also need to identify what they're actually being mapped to in terms of accountable, responsible, consulted, and informed. So we can see here that it says that the Chief Planning Officer owns the budget and is leading the project. It also says that there's a planning specialist that is to advise on the project. And also there's recognition that of input from the local town's Chamber of Commerce, or local input from the town's Chamber of Commerce. So we can almost see here that there's 2 or 3 stakeholders that are being mentioned. It's the Chief Planning Officer, the planning specialist, and the Chamber of Commerce. So if we were creating a RACI, we would map these, have our 2 axes or our table. We would have our potentially our stakeholders at the top, and then our tasks going across. Or if it were documents or it were products, or whatever the responsibility would these stakeholders would have over, would be on the one axis, and then the stakeholders would be across the other axis. So we can see that it says that the Chief Planning Officer owns the budget and is leading the project. So these 2 tasks, or these responsibilities, because ultimately the RACI is all about mapping the responsibilities of stakeholders, do we think that the Chief Planning Officer needs to be informed here? Is it saying that they need to be informed about these aspects, these tasks, the budget, or the project? Are they consulting? Are they actually consulting on these aspects? Does it say that the CPO is consulting on the budget, or are they consultant to the project? No, they're not. Now, also, are they saying, are they responsible for the budget, or are they responsible for the project? Now, what we have to remember in terms of RACI, responsible in RACI means the actual doing of the action. So if a person is responsible for the budget, it means that they are actually doing something with the budget. They're creating the budget, or managing the budget, or providing the budget. And if they are responsible for the project, they would actually be carrying out the work to produce the project's outcome. But the reality here is it says that the Chief Planning Officer owns the budget and is leading the project. So this rather falls under the accountable category. Accountable is just the responsibility of almost the management or the overseeing of those aspects. So here we can say that the CPO is accountable for these tasks. So if we look at what the question is actually asking us for here, remember you always have to ask or check what is being asked. It says, with regard to the overall project, which RACI categories best reflect the level of involvement of these stakeholders? Select all that apply. Okay, so the CPO is accountable. And if we look at the next stakeholder, who's the planning specialist, it says that they are advising on the project. Here we are looking, we can identify the keyword advise. Advise is not linked to being informed. The planning specialist doesn't need to be informed about the project. The planning specialist is not carrying out the actual actions or the activities or tasks to produce the project's outputs or outcomes. And the planning specialist is not accountable for the project. But that keyword there that says advise is indicating that the planning specialist is a consultant. He is actually consulting on this task, this aspect of the project or the project itself. So the planning specialist stakeholder who we first identified, now the task or the part of the project, the responsibility is for them to consult on the project. So far, the two stakeholders in this scenario here, we have A and B in our RACI categories. We haven't identified any responsible or informed categories of RACI yet. So we can also say that the Town's Chamber of Commerce is also a stakeholder, but that keyword there that says the local input, they recognize the importance of local input from the Town's Chamber of Commerce. Input is saying that the Town's Chamber of Commerce is going to be giving us who are working on the project some input or some feedback or some advice. They are going to be consulting once again on the project. They are not accountable for the project. They are not responsible for the task or doing of things in the project. And they don't need to be informed during the project. But what they are going to be doing is they're going to be providing input, or they're going to be a consultant. They're going to be consulting us on the project. So we can then identify here that we've kind of got one A, one accountable, and two C's, or two consulted in our RACI. So if they say which aspects of the RACI are being spoken about here in this question, we can see that it's A and C. Those are the correct questions that we've correct answers that we've selected here. The correct categories of RACI, and the incorrect ones are B and D, which is responsible and informed. So that covers that question. I hope it's given you some insight into how to answer a question like this. Just remember to read the question first, get an overview of what it's about, identify the technique, identify what they're actually asking for, clarify really about what they want you to answer or be tested on. Then start looking at the specifics and identify the correct answers. I'll see you in the next question. Cheers.